Aloha and welcome to Capital Connection with your host, Senator Angus McKelvey. I'm your moderator, Tom Blackburn Rodriguez. Duane Sparkman is our guest today. Duane is the chief engineer at the Westin Maui Resort and Spa, chair of the Maui County Arborist Committee, and the 2021 recipient of the Malama Iki Aina Award, and has been instrumental in Lahaina's fire recovery efforts. And we'll be speaking with him a little bit later on in the program, and I will apologize for mispronouncing his award name. And now your host of Capital Connection, Senator Angus McKelvey.
Aloha, everybody. Aloha, Tom. Thanks for joining us again. Me and our gracious moderator and our engineer, Gary. And aloha to you, our listeners out there.
Good morning, Senator. I hope everything's going well for you on this early day.
Yeah.
Well, I got to be careful about those open-ended questions.
Yeah, that's kind of the par for the course these days. So, but anyway, that being said, we persevere on. So,
well, Senator, I'm not sure. I just for a moment, 30 seconds to digress. I'm not sure folks know that you were actually staying in one of the hotels. I mean, you were a displaced person with a fire, right?
Yeah,
so
but it's not about me, Tom. The whole thing is about the other families, the other people who've lost their homes and are in a situation, although they're grateful for, is the fact it's not conducive for family.
Yes.
And so the hope is that, working with the Red Cross and the state with Mr. Tokyo and others, that we are facilitating a movement towards this, which should have been done, obviously, earlier. And again, it's, to have this safety net is appreciated by the community, but to move forward into providing housing that will have that kind of environment, but for families, is really important, especially moving into the holidays. There's been some things said. There were more, I think, in the lines of what thought could be done. However, they're kind of problematic. And so at this point, it's just a matter of trudging forward, but at least to have the partners at the table is good. But, I think it's super important that we not forget about the fact that people are, they have shelter, but they need the kind of family housing and such that's going on.
Senator, I think we all understand that your priority is what's happening to other folks out there, and we honor you and we thank you for that, because you are on the ground and you know exactly what's going on. I understand people can't cook in their rooms and, all these, you can't do family things together, right?
Well, it's the agency and liquidity of the disaster that's been missing since the beginning, which is if you'd given people that in the beginning, they probably could have had the resources to be able to stopgap themselves. But, because where we're at, that the help that the victims still need is quite pronounced, especially in the holidays. So hopefully, because it's the holidays, there'll be even more of a concerted effort to mobilize to get the families, from the hotels and other non-congregate shelter areas that, while they're grateful to have, especially when you saw with the storm last week, still, it's not conducive for a long-term situation for families. And, it might serve some, along the way, but we need to continue to push hard. And that's why the protesters are still doing the fishing, the west down at Ka'anapali, is to continue to bring attention to everybody to the fact that this is still unfinished business and we can't move forward to the additional phases unless we take care of the needs and the basic needs in this phase right now.
Well, I know, Senator, you have not only been focused on the needs of West Maui, but you've also been over on the other side of your district. What was going on at St. Teresa's and the Cookie Walk?
It was an amazing event down there. St. Teresa's did their Cookie Walk. It was a way to raise money for the different causes that they work on. There was arts and crafts people that were there. One of the most amazing, interesting, they're all amazing and great crafts that were there, along with the amazing selection of cookies. And Tom, of course, took 13, not 12.
Senator, let's be honest here. You took 13, I took 8. All right.
Yeah, right. Your version of 8 is another version of 24. But
eight baklavas.
That being said, well, one of the more interesting vendors that was there, and this really speaks to the innovation in our small business in Maui, is a couple that have come up with a new card game, and it's pretty neat. It takes a battle card theme, like you see in some of these, like Pokemon and others, but it uses historical figures from like different types, like literary, science, inventors, and you have these figures, for lack of a better word, battle each other. And so along the way, you learn things about kids playing the game will learn things about these figures, these historical figures. Like the two sets that I found most interesting were Nikola Tesla and Albert Einstein.
and they
That's
actually,
quite a battle royale right
and
there.
they fight each other in the card game, the two
Yeah,
geniuses?
you playing a deck of cards as Albert Einstein, the other player playing Nikola Tesla as a deck of cards. You put cards on the table and you battle with them. And so that's called a battle card game. A lot of our younger listeners who are out there probably know what I'm talking about. But for older ones, it's like war, a version of war, the classic card game. But it was really interesting. It was innovative, and I think this is something that a lot of kids will enjoy this holiday, beyond the holiday season. And so we're looking forward to trying to align them with resources in DBED that can help them with their marketing. We can help them develop strategic partnerships with other entertainment, sellers and venues, and perhaps with those who use educational products in their workplace or as part of their mission. So, helping them to expand what is a great idea means, and this is a Maui company. One of the things that is great about our small local Maui companies is they don't have a desire to pick up and move to Silicon Valley or anything.
Right.
So the they stay successful, they hire here and they grow and they tend to stay here. And so that's and the other thing too is it's not all. A lot of the great products that are coming out of Made in Maui are not what you would normally think of as a quote Made in Maui product if you weren't from Hawaii.
Well, I enjoyed the cookie walk. I know we went in together and produced 13 brownies with little candy canes in them. And the ladies at the cookie vendor place there, they were on the tables, and they said those things flew out the door. So,
it was a great event, and I thought we actually had to walk. Although after those cookies, I definitely had to walk.
Senator, what's the we've been seeing on news stories? What's the latest on the Hagagi Institute and the housing that you've been working on?
The Haggai Institute?
Haggai.
Yes, the Haggai Institute. Yes. Well, the story was done in the Maui News about the purchase. It's in the due diligence phase right now. There were some concerns issued about unanticipated maintenance costs because it's being used to help house the fire victims now. And so we were able to finally, working with the different entities, coordinate the involvement of the HIEMA, Hawaii Emergency Management, to basically use funds that they've gotten to be able to offset these costs. And because of that, it looks like everything is on track to hopefully be able to be conveyed as we originally intended when we put the item in. And again, I've given, props. My former colleague, Senator Agaron, was very helpful in putting all this together at the last minute, literally. So it's good news for the Kihei community. And, of course, what it's going to provide beyond the immediate need is going to be much needed workforce housing, especially for teachers and others who are literally steps away from the schools that they're going to work at.
That's right. It's only like a 5-minute walk or something like that from.
Yeah, you can throw a frisbee from one of the windows if you're really good and you got a trade one. You probably could land it over there in the parking lot.
Senator, before we get into our interview with Duane Sparkman, who has just called in and is waiting on the line, the county and the Hawaii Land Trust have preserved some land out there. Is this a big purchase? Big save at the Bay?
It's a really big purchase. It's an acquisition of more open space for preservation out in an area where, because of everything that's happened, there's going to be an increased flurry of housing coming up. And so to be able to still have this preservation deal go through, given everything, is important.
This is the Honokahau?
What's that?
What bay is this? What exactly, for our listeners who may not know, what exactly is the land being preserved?
What's a reserve? A reserve is an area where you it's usually off limits from fishing and other types of activities.
I see.
The protection of the environment and the restoration of the area is the number one thing. And so the activities in there are limited because of that. One of the most famous preserves, of course, is the Honolulu Bay Preserve up on the north side. And so it becomes a management area to help to bring back the species that are endangered, and also to help address issues like runoff and other types of issues that's degrading the environment of the place. And it's a special ecosystem, like so many of our special ecosystems, and including some of the ones that the community groups are working hard in South Maui to preserve right now.
Well, and I think the listeners should know this is preserved in perpetuity. This will never then be housing built on it, no golf courses, all those kinds of things. This is going to be preserved in its natural state. Yeah,
exactly. And that's the key thing right there. It's going to be preserved in its natural state. And if that's the most important thing right there, because that's what's going to heal the ecosystem. And there's all the other benefits too, as we saw with recently, in trying to create natural areas where there is natural buffers against fire protection.
Right.
For these areas.
Well, we do have Duane Sparkman on the line. And Duane, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
We're fine. We're kind of happy about some news of land being preserved, and the senator is on the line. Senator, would you like to begin the conversation with Duane Sparkman?
Hello?
Yes. Can you hear me? Senator, can you hear me? Duane is on the line.
Oh, hello, sir. You there?
I'm there. How you doing, Angus?
Hey, how you doing? Doing good. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great, bro. Another beautiful day here at Royal Lahaina.
Oh, perfect. So anyway, Duane, why don't we start from like the 30,000-foot view, and maybe you can explain to our viewers, what your entity does, how you're involved with tree protection, and some of the things that you've been doing in this area before the fire started, before we had the situation.
Well, as far as what I've been doing, we're doing a lot of restoration work in Olowalu Valley, as well as work in Honokowai with Maui Cultural Lands, Ikolu Lindsay. Those guys have really set up a lot of cool spots to have, the tourists come in and locals come in and have a great experience in the valleys and, learn about restoration, learn about organic farming, actually plant some kalo. We actually planting native trees too. So we've just been all immersed in this kind of side projects called Kipuka Olowalu and then Maui Cultural Lands. And it's just been absolutely amazing. Now, what we got going on in town since the fire has been pretty incredible, where we've got a team of people that go in and we are GPSing live trees for homeowners, and we have a map that the guy has, and he goes around, he waters those trees so that we can make sure that whatever is alive in Lahaina stays alive in Lahaina. So it's very critical that we keep whatever is there alive. And it really helps with the confidence of the community, too. It's great.
No, it really does. To see, because it's a symbol of rebirth, of healing. If nothing else, he brings that. It's like, hey, the Lahaina is going to come back. Look what survived. There's nothing should have survived this, but yet, look what survived. And you GPS all of the living trees in Lahaina, every one of them at this point.
We're about halfway through getting all the live trees GPS. There are quite a few that did survive, although we did lose the majority of them, unfortunately. We're estimating a loss of about 25,000 trees in the Lahaina area. Wow. So it's kind of frightening and daunting to think that we've got to put 25,000 trees back when it comes time. And so that's also part of our process, is to get the information from the landowners. What kind of trees do they want to have back in their neighborhoods? And then start growing those trees out for them. It's critical that we get the word from the community that says, hey, this is what we want. And then us as growers will start growing those trees specifically for these people, because we want to make sure that these trees are available when it comes time to rebuild. It's going to be critical for these trees to be available.
Exactly. Now, one of the questions that discussions have come up is that, trees that were burned, there were a lot of them that were considered invasives, that had their, had we had our druthers, they wouldn't be there in the first place. And now there's several in the community who are saying, hey, you know what? we should be using this opportunity to replant native species and non-invasive into these areas. Is there an effort to educate landowners, or perhaps to go this way with government in government areas like the counties, places, or public right of way, like the state, for instance?
Yes, absolutely. As a matter of fact, we are working with different urban forestry people within the state and county, and the county arborists, so that we get a better idea of what species would be the best to handle these areas. And then we're going to start, growing those trees out. We're going to have a number of native trees, awesome native trees available for parks and roadsides and public spaces. Amongst that, fruit trees. We want food security. And a lot of people are saying they want their mangoes back. They want the ulus back. They want avocados. They want lychee. It's incredible.
Yeah, for sure. The mango and the ulu are iconic of Lahaina town, for sure. I mean, Luakini Street used to be one of the biggest ulu groves, in history. And then, of course, you have, who can forget Lahaina summers with mangoes dropping all over the place on the street and sliding.
Exactly.
And more mango bread than you can shake a stick at. And that's the iconic Lahaina that people want to see brought back. So to ensure that those kinds of trees are there, can be replanted. Now, out of the surviving ones that you've seen, is there any kind of a commonality with them that you've discovered, or is it just random, or was it based on the species of the tree? Or is there any kind of data that came out insofar as what was survived?
What we're finding is the buildings. It's proximity to buildings. So what we're finding is the trees do not burn down the houses. It's the house heat. It's the heat from the fire from the houses that actually burn the trees. And we're actually finding areas where mango trees, bamboo, bananas actually saved houses. So it's really incredible to see that if you've got something with a heavy moisture load and a big shade area, it'll actually put out embers, and embers will stop burning in these areas and actually snuff out a fire before it gets to a house. So we've seen trees actually save people and save homes. It's pretty incredible. So the common denominator is just proximity to homes, and that's the craziest part is the trees basically, they get microwaved because they're surrounded by so much heat. So that's what we really saw. And if it had space and it was distance from a structure, it survived. It's pretty amazing.
Really? Wow. So is one of the strategies then, as you replant trees perhaps, is to try to work with the homeowners to create this kind of environment that'll be help make it more fire resistant, to your point, like more banana trees per se along because they have low roots, right? They're not going to dig under the foundation, so you can kind of line them right up there close to the house, and that's an amazing service that people would want to definitely know about, for sure.
Right, and so that's where Treecovery comes in, and we'll be able to educate people about what we saw, and then we can tell them about hey, this is where you should plant this tree, so that you and your neighbor can share it, because we're getting requests to say put 5 or 6 giant trees on a little tiny postage stamp lot, and they won't fit. And so we've got to educate the homeowner that, you can have a tree, but maybe you only have 1 or 2 of those varieties, and then your neighbor has 1 or 2 different varieties, and you guys share. We're all in the same boat right now. We're all going to get to know our neighbors really well. So this is the time when we start sharing what we have.
Well, the community approach, that's building Lahaina the way it originally was built. It's like, okay, the mangoes trees, they kind of popped up all over the place, because they weren't like all crowded together. They were popped up around the place because people had different kinds of trees and plants everywhere, right? And so it's like you mix and match, and you have the whole bunch, so to speak.
And we also have to consider the fact that we don't want a monocrop. We want to make sure that we have varieties and diversity. Because if we have some sort of disease that comes in that hits one type of tree, it could wipe all of those types of trees out. So we've got to make sure that we don't do one specific type. We do a bunch of different varieties so that we don't have an issue with that, But we've also got to think into the future as we grow these giant trees and we have all this food. What are we going to do with it? How are we going to distribute it? How are we going to collect it? That type of stuff. Because, as you start to grow these giant agroforests, you could create more problems by leaving the fruit around, and then you have pests, mice, rats, other things,
if you drove down before the fire by Sacred Heart School, you'd slide sometimes on the road because there was so much mango falling from the trees. I mean, it was just.
Yep.
But to your point, I mean, when it rains, when it rained mango, it poured mango. But people loved it.
Yep.
They also, it was, I mean, there were those side effects, and we had a lot of fat birds running around because of it. But I think it was just it was one of those things that, you knew summer was here, and it was one of those, a lot of the community events, you'd see mango bread and everything. But to your point, we have to have this diversity. But you bring up a really good point, a pivot place, if you will, and that is about, invasive species that could come in and wipe out, a trees if it's all one tree. And, one of the invasives that's reared its ugly head recently in South Maui is the coconut rhinoceros. And do you think, and of course there's been the issues with the little fire ant coming in with different kinds of potted plants. Do you think that there's going to, with all of this plant material coming in from all over the place, there's going to be an extra concern or diligence needed for tracking, reporting, and funding more, invasive species of all this stuff coming in?
Absolutely. I mean, put it this way: we're to the point with Treecovery where we want to avoid the import of anything at this point. To be honest, especially if it's if it is like a product that was recently produced, on another island that has something that we know we don't want, we are not bringing that in. And we've really got to be careful about even shipping trees between islands because they can bring in the little fire ant, coqui frog. We've also got there's a citrus there's like a citrus disease that's going around all of California right now, and that's something we really don't want to have here. So I actually have a meeting today with USDA to discuss the possibility of developing a large-scale quarantine facility on Maui so that way we can avoid bringing stuff in. That way we bring all the material to one site, we monitor it over the course of a month or so, we make sure that no pests are in there, and then we can release those things.
Yeah, I mean, look what Sunkist got going down in the Central Valley. Sorry, Mahi Pono. I mean, that's if that disease shows up here, then all of those crops are done for. I mean, at this point.
Yes. So we've got to be very careful.
Have enough inventory on island that homeowners and others should be able to procure the trees and the amounts and types that they need exclusively from within Maui, that they don't need to bring it in from elsewhere. What about the cost factor? I guess would be the only other question to somebody listening.
Well, that's going to be the hard part, is the cost factor. So that's where we've got to figure out, funding sources. So that's one of my conversations I'm having with USDA is, the funding sources to build something like that, because we know that it's a critical need for this island. Just in the time that, we've had the fire, we had the CRB, the coconut rhinoceros beetles, show up. And we found them in Kihei. And that's scary. It's super scary to know that we've got some already here. I mean, from what they're saying on Oahu, that they are in Lauhala, they're in Kalo, they're in banana patches, they're eating everything. So we've got to be very diligent on this, and we got to make sure we pay attention to these CRBs and get them out of here ASAP. So a good friend of mine has got an idea. Yeah, go ahead.
No, you finished. Sorry, it was a static. I thought you.
Yeah, so a good friend of mine has an idea to train chickens to eat CRB. How's that? Because chickens typically go for grubs, and that's a giant grubworm. So he's looking at trying to teach our chickens that we're overrun with, to eat those things. And if that's the case, we can teach chickens to do something for us. So it's kind of cool.
Well, the CRB is actually a very strange invasive because it actually adopts, mimics, and changes its behavior depending upon the environment. And during the info briefing we had in Honolulu with the Department of Ag, they talked about how the CRB in Guam are actually burrowing 6 feet under the ground and coming up from underneath into the tree. And so that over here, they may change their habits and such, so you can't just automatically be like, okay, this is how they're going to be, and this is how they're going to attack, and this is how they're going to, and what they're going to attack, to your point of moving on, having other. So that's the whole thing which really worries them, is the fact that they got to keep an eye out so far how it's changing its behavior system. But you're saying it's become pretty rampant in Oahu. We don't want it over here at all.
No, we don't want it over here.
Has there been any outbreaks
we really
on
don't.
the Kihei one you know of?
Say what now?
I said, has there been any outbreaks besides the one in South Maui recently that you know?
No, not that we know of. We know that we found the one dead larvae inside of a bag of compost that came over from Oahu about maybe a month ago. And then about a week and a half after that, they found the ones in South Maui on Lake Poa in a bunch of coconut trees. And so they dispatch those immediately, but that's a frightening scenario because that tells us they're here. If they're already up in the coconut trees and they're live, those things are the size of an opeapea bat, and they can fly around like a lot, and it's kind of frightening. So they can cover a lot of space very quickly. So it's kind of scary even thinking those things would even be here.
Yeah, they can mobilize around real fast, and then we lose the coconut trees. That's it. I mean, It's a very iconic, important, type of tree to have. One of the things that came up, like people are, obviously we want to try to get everybody to, if we can procure all of this on island, that would be the way to go. But because of costs and other reasons, people theoretically are going to be bringing stuff in from other places. And one of the issues that came up was the plant quarantine inspection branch in the Department of Ag that handles that function. And my blunt question to them was, you don't have enough inspectors now. Are you going to have enough inspectors and facilities for all of this coming in from Lahaina? And normally they would get the funding for that from the cargo container inspection fee, which is assessed on every piece of cargo coming in. And I said to them, what you're going to have to increase this fee to increase the personnel in the space. What are you going to do? Do you think that is a pragmatic conversation from your viewpoint insofar as trying to ensure there's enough inspectors, or do you think that the organizations like yourself or other entities could be brought in to provide extra inspection capabilities?
Absolutely. And just in talking with USDA, just briefly, last week they said that a nonprofit could run a quarantine facility. So that's where I'm having that conversation with them today to see if Treecovery nonprofit can possibly, organize and facilitate this facility so that way everybody can utilize it. That way it's like if we have a space that's away from all the ag, where it needs to be, where it should be, and then we actually go through the process of having a space that we can, incinerate stuff that if it does show up, we can immediately dispatch it and get it out of here. But that also gives us a chance to build up our capacity of biochar, where this location can actually, not only be an incinerator for getting rid of stuff, we can actually throw material in there and create biochar that we need to put back in Lahaina too. So there's a twofold thing for this, where we can actually utilize the material coming out of the incinerator and put it back as a bioremediation process within the burn zone of Lahaina. And we need it desperately. We don't have enough biochar, and we don't have a big enough biochar facility here to make it. So we've got to scale up at some point. So this would be a great opportunity to do so.
Definitely want to work with you on, and the USDA for sure. Do you think it should be sited like in central area because that's where your ports, your intake areas are, or are you envisioning that something like this would be more strategically sited up towards the west side, or does the use of this obviously goes far beyond Lahaina too, right?
Right. So that's the thing. We got to think. I'm thinking somewhere central, away from main ag areas, and that's difficult. Look at how much area Mahipono has in all of their ag areas, right? And as a requirement to build one of these, it has to be substantially away from agricultural areas. So we've got to talk to various landowners that are in the correct spaces to say, can we do this? Is this the right area to do this on? And then build it. Make it happen. Because we've got to, there's really, at this point, like you said, we don't have enough inspectors, and the space is very small there at the airport. They can only do so much, with what they've got. And so if they could increase the amount of inspectors and get a bigger facility, we'd be winning. But that's not the case right now. So that's where,
Yeah. And the thing is that, and it appears to me that they don't have a plan right now for this. And what worries me is that if the stuff's going to sit there, and eventually there's going to be this pressure just to get it out, and it's very lightly touching the air, quotes in the air, inspected.
Yeah.
And
that's what we got to get.
What happens is you get a little fire in Lahaina now.
Yeah. Yeah, and we don't want any of that. We really don't want any of that over here. Trust me. It's detrimental to our systems to have that stuff in here. It's just really, really bad. So, my big conversation today is going to try to push that point that, if we have to bring stuff in, we need a large scale facility to oversee this stuff for at least a month. We know that Larry Ellison has one on Lanai, and he does that. He's got a quarantine facility there, and I'd be able to go over there and check it out, see what it looks like, and see if we can, scale that up here on Maui and see what it's like. You know what I mean? We do have enough areas, away from ag to do it. I've just got to figure out how to get the landowners and everybody on the same page and make sure that we can all discuss this and get it all set up and done right the first time.
Senator, Senator, I have a question for Duane. That he said something that interested me, and I'm not sure if I caught it right, but Duane, you mentioned Treecovery. Is that an organization or a process?
It's actually an organization. We're a nonprofit organization. It started. We just incorporated about 2 weeks ago. We've got our information in right now. We're waiting for our 501(c) status to come through. We do have a website. We're starting to take donations already. And what we are is we're basically a volunteer group. It's a hui of very intelligent people that live here on Maui, and on Oahu and on the Big Island. A lot of people want to help, and they just don't know how. And so Treecovery is a way that we can actually get people to help grow trees for the residents of Lahaina. And so I've got a bunch of meetings today in various places. We're gonna talk to different hotels and have them grow trees on their rooftops and in different spaces, so that way we have ample space to grow out 30,000 trees. Oh my gosh, that's a lot of trees. But we've got to have spaces to do this, and we've got a lot of volunteers willing to help. We are going to be purchasing smaller trees and then potting them up and growing them over time. So it's not like we're trying to, hurt the industry or anything. We want to make sure that the horticulturalists grow their trees, that, we can purchase them small now and then grow them out large and have them ready in, 3 to 5 years when they go in the ground. And that's where our nonprofit comes in. As we start to build this nest egg of funding, we can actually go out and start purchasing smaller trees right now, getting them to our hubs, getting those hubs to pot them into larger pots, and then distributing them to our locations to where they can be grown out and monitored. So it's kind of a cool process. It's takes a lot of hands to make this. So that's why we're doing the Lau Lima style. Many hands make light work. So we're doing that.
Well, thank you for that. That's a good explanation. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for the question.
So anyway, Duane, I'm sorry, frog in my throat. One of the things that been going on, that I guess you were working on in Lahaina, was applying to a certain kind of a fixture that would help to create more of a process for contamination runoff with mold. Is that? Yeah. Do you want to basically explain that to our listeners on how that works and what it does?
Gotcha. No problem. So what was really neat is the EPA and Army Corps. They've been listening to what the public wants, what the community of Lahaina wants. They sit down with us and they listen to us. It's amazing. And so what we said is, listen, we see that you guys got these best management practices, these BMPs, is what they call them, and they have these wattles. And these wattles are basically a bark mulch inside of a sock. It's like a 4-inch diameter sock, and those are laid in around any storm drain or anywhere where water would penetrate and go down into the ocean or into a storm drain, right? So it kind of filters out sediment, okay? So that's what they did. They put in these BMPs according to construction level. When we talked to them, we kind of said, hey, this doesn't seem like a construction site. It seems more like a hazmat destruction site. Can we elevate our BMPs? Can we make them better? And they did. Mm-hmm. They actually added a biochar element, which actually has little tiny pockets for protozoas to live and help break down certain, material, so that we can take a mineral and break it into elements and feed it to plants, and then it's no longer a toxic chemical. We're also putting in an inoculated fungus, so we put a fungus in on that mulch sock as well, and then that fungus can help bioremediate material too. It can actually bind and hold in some heavy metals and break down toxins. So those things are in place, and EPA stepped up and started installing them and started doing it, according to what we asked. So we couldn't be more happy with what we're seeing down there. We'll have a meeting in the middle of 1 week, and 4 days later they're actually doing the work. And so it's neat to see them jump right into what we ask them to do. So this bioremediation thing is critical for us. We've got to be able to slow down those toxins, slow down those heavy metals, stop them from entering the ocean. We don't want them on our reef. We don't want them out in the areas which we swim, surf, play. We've got to keep that out of there. So that's a big push for them right now and us. We have a group called the Bioremediation Coalition, and they're helping out as well to look at doing
so
soil
everybody on this one, everybody's on the same page supporting the rapid expansion of the bioremediation.
Yeah, it's really incredible.
Really good to hear, because I know when we talked a little while ago, there was some frustrations in trying to get traction. So I'm really glad to hear that. Because what the obvious advantages of being able to do this quickly are there, especially as we saw last week with the first Kona storm.
Right.
Like and that was
their big push.
Is going to be heavier.
Because we told them, we said, listen, we can control people. We cannot control the rain. And they said, oh, well, let's get on it. And so they did. They really got on it, and they put a bunch of good stuff in for us down there trying to protect it. Now, I will say this. If in all of that rain, I bet Lahaina town below the highway maybe got an eighth of an inch out of all of that rain.
Mm-hmm.
So they really got very little down there in town. So we're very fortunate in that sense because we didn't have any puddling and runoff. So it's kind of a good thing that it didn't heavy rain.
Do you think, though, let's just say the next storm that comes, something we get heavy rain, like what was supposed to happen. Do you think we're in a position now to where, because of the work and you've been doing and others, that the environmental damage could be somewhat negated? Or, in your opinion, if something like that were to, are we still behind the eight ball, and if something like that were to happen, there could be the potential of large
I'd
scale
say a little
damage?
bit, maybe a little bit. We could definitely go further. Best management is dependent on how far certain guys take it, right? And if we want to take the management to a better level, we can, but it's depending on funding. We can go as far as putting, millions of yards of inoculated, fungal inoculated bark mulch out, and that would help out tremendously. We just don't have the funding for it. I've got different groups that have enough of the material, but we just need the funding. And that's what we're trying to find is funding sources.
Okay, well, that's where hopefully we go offline from here. We can talk more about trying to align that, especially now. Because, in my mind, it's worth the money to remediate all of this as much as possible because, the cost is going to be borne not by only us, but by kids and their kids and the kids after that.
Yeah, it's a generational problem. And we got to think about this, Angus. So we grow all these trees out, right? And if the soil is not remediated or not healthy, we're going to plant trees in sick soil, and the trees are going to get sick. And it's going to be really hard for us to really get those trees to a healthy point. We've got to have good soil for them to, marry into and then have this beautiful tree come out of the ground. So we've got to make sure we do something good for the soil and not just walk away.
Work that needs to be done both by your organization, but also generally speaking, is soil remediation. Which that's something you don't hear about at all, but that's a big component, is what you're saying.
Right. Now, I will say this. They, FEMA, this is the first place in all of the disasters that FEMA has dealt with where they have done soil removal. It's the first place.
Really?
So, this is, So
and why the differentiation in doing that here? Is it
because of the cultural impacts, right? Cultural and environmental impacts. So here in Hawaii, culture and environment, they are almost in tune with each other, right? And that's how we look at it. As Kanaka of the land, we look at that connection, the aina, the full connection, right? And so we look at the little microbes, and we want to make sure the microbes are happy, because if they're happy, everything else is happy, right? We talk about the coral polyp, the littlest, tiniest coral polyp, and that makes us happy. So we look at it like that. So they listened to us, and they said, wow, these guys need their soil fixed. And it's also proximity to one of the biggest reefs in the entire state, right? So we have Olowalu Reef right out there. That's the largest reef system here in Hawaii, so we can't damage that. And they realize that. And so it's also proximity to the ocean. So they're like, they're willing to help out as much as they can. And it's great because they're listening, Angus. They're actually
by
listening,
they,
and they're
you
moving
mean,
forward with stuff.
By they, you
EPA.
mean the Corps, who I just want to make sure the listeners know who the they are.
Yeah, well, that's going to be EPA. EPA is listening. Yep. The government is listening, and they're actually moving upon a bunch of really good stuff. So it's starting to build a little bit of trust with me. Trust is hard with the government here, but it's good that they're listening and we're seeing the action.
So finally we're getting to that level from the feds and the counties with the community. Things are finally starting to be driven on the community feedback basis. That is great news to my ears. I'll tell you that. So, you just made my day very happier.
Well, awesome. That's what I'm talking about. And every day that I see something new or they want to help us out even more, I'm even more happy because it's just like they're here to help, and they really are.
Well, this is why we got to maximize all of these things now, especially with the storms coming up. So I'm glad to hear there was the turnaround insofar as when we first talked about it, the situation, and trying to move forward. And now, what in your mind in the catalog of trees was the most unique or interesting one that survived? There's something you thought like, wow, that survived the fire. Is there anything that stands out in your mind?
A couple things. Going around and seeing the ulus coming back. You know what I mean? Even though the entire top of the tree is gone and now we have 2 and 3 foot sprouts coming out of the ground and a bunch of ulu trees throughout Lahaina in various places, young, old, medium age. And so we're really happy to see the ulu trees coming back, because we know a lot of people want the ulu trees coming back. And that's, to me, that's absolutely amazing, you know. And then seeing the bananas, oh my gosh, so much bananas. But Angus, there's a big problem with the bananas right now. There's a lot of them that have the banana bunchy top virus coming up right now. And so now we're looking at it. We may have to start taking out lots of bananas in Lahaina and starting over, because this virus can be spread within 3 to 4 hours. If aphids get on it, they'll spread it to all the other banana patches. So we've got to be very careful with the banana situation right now, because we are seeing a lot of banana bunchy top coming up from the new growth, and it's kind of frightening.
And that cycles back to the crux of our conversation from earlier is, you know, all of this stuff's coming in, but there better be a robust inspection system or a partnership system of inspections, and you know, and sticks and carrots everywhere else to ensure, because all of this stuff can come in, not just the you know, the well-known players, right, like little fire ant and coconut rhinoceros deals, also blast from the past, bunchy top virus, which you know, is still prevalent.
I mean, it is. It's very frustrating, because a lot of folks are like, oh, cool, my bananas are coming back, and then I got to tell them, yeah, but guess what? You're going to have to take them out. And they're like, wait, why? And then we show them, and it's just like, oh no. You know, it is. It's like you see that green and you're super happy, but unfortunately it's got a disease, and now it's got to go. You know, and then we're having the same issue with some of the trees. You know, we have giant coconut trees that look okay, but the very top is burned, and it has green coming out, but the top is burned, and that tree will die between now and 5 years. It's going to break, and some folks are like, well, we're going to keep it anyway. Well, unfortunately, that's a big liability concern, because your insurance company knows it was marked by Army Corps to be removed. So if it falls and it does something, you are liable, and you're going to have to cover all the costs on it. So they've got to be they got to pay attention to these markings and realize that if the tree is marked for removal, allow it to be removed. It's an unsafe hazard.
Well, what about to the homeowners? Like, okay, I got to let it be removed, but can I replant it in the future when all this is said and done? I mean, can I put it back? Or is putting it back going to cause some problems with the insurance company down the road?
No, because put it this way, if the insurance company, they are going to work with Army Corps when it comes time to do the land removal. They're going to work with Army Corps, and either insurance is going to cover the cost of the removal of the tree, or Army Corps will cover the cost of the removal of the tree. And then you're going to have that availability to get trees back. You know, and so, you know, Treecovery is going to try to grow as many trees as possible at no cost for everybody. But it might cost to install a 20 or 30 foot tall coconut, because now you got to get a backhoe and a flatbed and drive that thing out there and deliver it. It costs, you know, that's a cost that Treecovery won't cover, but we'll cover the tree cost. So we'll give you the tree for free, but you got to move it. You know, and so that becomes something. But if we can help you and save you some money and at least let you know that we got trees for you when it comes time, I think that puts people's mind at ease, you know, as they go through all of this frustration.
Exactly. Real quickly, because I think we're coming to the end of our interview. But thank you so much for being on this morning. What can residents do, or people, homeowners who are coming back in, or others listening in South Maui, wherever? What can they do if they, you know, think they see an invasive species? If they say they think they see a beetle or larva or a fire ant, is there a place they can call, or what agency would they reach out to on Maui?
Absolutely. Well, you've got 643 PEST. That's 643-7378. We also have the Maui Invasive Species Committee. You see an invasive species, you call MISC, and they'll come out and mitigate that for free. No cost to you, but you have to allow them on your property to do a good investigation. Just allow them. These people are professionals, and they want to make sure that they catch those invasive species and get them out. So call those two institutions. They can definitely help you get these things dealt with. You know, and then if you want to help with this Treecovery project, we are treecoveryhawaii.org. You guys can look us up and donate if you like. We have T-shirts for sale too. We're just trying to support the cause. We need a lot of help to try to make sure that we have some financial security so we can make sure we can have trees for Lahaina.
Definitely. Well, we look forward to working with you on that, especially on the biochar facility. Clearly, there's a need for Lahaina and all of Maui. So hopefully with our colleagues, we can keep this discussion going. Thanks again so much for coming in. Appreciate the work. And thank you for the good news. It's good to hear that things are really starting to move forward with these different levels of government.
Well, Thanks for having me, Angus. I appreciate it. You guys have a beautiful day. Thank you so much. Aloha.
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 Well, Senator, that is one enthusiastic gentleman. He really
Well,
loves
yeah,
his work.
we're grateful to have his scientific expertise in this area, and and this is a huge part of rebuilding line, but also a way to again improve on what was there, make it slightly better insofar as the kinds of trees brought in, the variety, the amount, and to our earlier conversation, of course, trying to bring in more native species to replace the invasive ones that have popped up all over the place over the years.
And
and then of course the plant inspection issue.
I was going to say, Senator, just to give the listeners that number again, because he did kind of give it to us quickly. What can residents do now to report invasive species? You can call 643-PEST or 643-7378, or you can go to 643pest.org and you can report an invasive species if you think you see something. So if you see something, say something. So let's make sure they have that telephone number. And as soon as he puts together the institute that can train the chickens, I've got about 30 chickens I'd like to bring over there and train them to eat those beetles.
I don't know how you train a chicken. I just throw it on the ground and they'll eat it.
Well, they don't listen to you. You know that, Senator. You talk to a chicken and it just looks at you. But at any rate, Senator, there's something else going on with some a preserve you visited. Do you want to talk about that and some follow-up meetings?
Oh yes, there's down in South Maui. There's a group working on we're preserving an area of wetlands and restoring them as well. And they're doing amazing work. And I went and did a site visit earlier this year, and we're going to be talking with them more to see what we can do insofar as some potential type of manpower assistance through DLNR, perhaps the Green Corps. Or through some kind of funding to help them with their efforts. Already, the work they've done, which has been mostly sweat and sweat equity, has produced amazing results. And to me, the most amazing one was how the water came in, and when it reaccreted into the area, native species that hadn't been seen there for 100 years all of a sudden reappeared, and the invasives did not. And so that's why to me it was pretty remarkable how rapidly that was occurring. And now you have another fire buffer too in the area, and it helps when the floods happen to control the runoff. So it definitely does many things for the community at one fell swoop.
And
so
this is the
work with them.
Senator, this is the Waiahuli Kai Preserve that we're talking
about?
That
is correct, sir. Yes.
Yeah, and I see signs on the South Kihei Road by that, and says if you want to participate, here's how you volunteer. So they're recruiting grassroots people to do volunteer work on this. It looks very interesting.
And already the work that they've done has been amazing. I mean, to me, that the reemergence of the native grasses that were there and plants. I mean, that's pretty amazing. They've had people from UH come over and look at it, but also you see the whole area. You look across and you're like, wow! Now it was all dry and dead, and now it's restored and it creates a buffer if something bad like that were to happen in that area.
And I actually see families fishing on the weekends.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like all coming back together. Senator, what's happening with the Filipino Resource Fair at the Lahaina Civic Center? You want to give us a
brief?
So
the Filipino Resource Fair is going on again. Being put on by the Maui Filipino Chamber of Commerce here at the Lahaina Civic Center this Saturday, and they will have different groups from all different organizations to help specifically our Filipino community with everything from issues with federal government issues and appeals to DUA assistance issues, as well as for small businesses, some of the program and grants and things that are available. They'll have all sorts of different organizations there participating, and they came out before and it was very successful. And this is to show the Filipino community that they're actively involved and still wanting to help to create that kind of culturally aware representation and connection that they need, because it's a very difficult, confusing process across the board, and very much so for some people.
Well, a lot of it is confusing. A lot of it is paperwork, and anything that you can do to help people with that and work with the Filipino community, I know is very much appreciated. And so,
well, yes, exactly, and in different areas, and so this is why, it's so great. All these outside, resource people are coming in from the Filipino community, bringing their professional expertise in to help, the community members here. And so, it's especially in some of the areas which may require more enhanced representation, like, legal representation, perhaps.
Senator, we have about 2 minutes left in the program. Would you like to tell the audience how they can contact you with questions or concerns?
Yes, you can contact me or my office. My amazing staff, Wendy and Beth, are there to help you. Questions, current concerns, etc. 808-586-6070. You can email us, send McKelvey at capital.tol.hawaii, spells out, .gov. We'll try best to help you with your issue. We can't promise 100% success, but I will promise that we'll work 150% on trying to resolve your issue. Facebook, Instagram, it is at Send McKelvey.
And I would recommend that people go to that. It's full of information, and also check in on YouTube for some of the archived shows that we have here on. So be sure and do that as well. We'd like to invite you to tune in to Capital Connection every Wednesday at 7 a.m. right here on KAOI 1110 a.m. and its affiliated FM stations. Senator, thank you for another great show. Aloha.
Aloha, everybody, and thank you, Tom, and everybody.